Hi, I'm Mike the Entei, and I've been playing Pure Yummy in Yu-Gi-Oh Master Duel since it came out in late 2025. With its ability to swing for huge attack power, reach its ideal endboard with lots of one-card combos, and a slew of disruption options that will force both you and your opponent to think carefully, I think it's a great deck for people wanting to learn the ins and outs of Yu-Gi-Oh! It's definitely helped me become a better player, and I hope that by the end of this guide, you'll learn a lot of things about the Yummy deck and about Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck building in general. When I say pure Yummy, I'm referring to a deck list whose goal is singularly to end up on a Yummy-focused endboard and doesn't involve any other major lines of play. This makes the deck's playstyle a bit less versatile, but because the main goal of your combo is going to be similar no matter what you draw in your opening hand, pure builds are usually a bit easier to learn. In fact, this deck has 17 one-card combos. If you start with just one of your Yummy monsters, or Dotscaper, or one of your Sky Striker cards, you can climb all the way up to the classic Yummy full combo, and for the most part, drawing more than one starter makes it that much harder to stop you. The first card I'll explain is actually Pure Erase Map, since it's the first thing you should use if you get it. It allows you to add a monster with 0 attack from your deck to your hand, but you won't be able to use its effects until you normal summon it. You also lose half your life points, but that's worth it if you end up getting to play the game. You can get Cupsy Yummy, which is generally considered the best starter for the deck, and Cupsy's limited to just one copy, meaning that running Raise Map is almost like running 4 Cupsy. You can get Dotscaper instead, which is a decent normal summon in its own right too. Even if you already have a Cupsy or Dotscaper in your hand, you can use Raise Map, and you might even hope that it gets negated, so they won't disable your other cards as searching effects. However, the biggest drawback of this card, even bigger than losing 4,000 life points, is that your opponent can use Droll and Lockbird on it, which will turn the tables on you and make you unable to use those better searching effects at all. I still think it's worth it though. It's a huge consistency boost to the deck. Dotscaper is relatively simple to explain. Dotscaper is a level 1 card that you can normal summon, and then link off into Link Karibo or Salamangreat Almirage. When Dotscaper is sent to the graveyard or banishment zone, you can special summon it for free. Because this revival effect isn't activated while Dotscaper is on the field, the opponent can't use popular hand traps such as Effect Failure and Infinite Impermanence to stop it. Sky Striker Mobilize Engage lets you search out another Sky Striker card, namely Sky Striker Mecha Hornet Drones. Both cards need your main monster zones to be empty to work, so you'll be using the Sky Striker cards early on if you get them too. Engage is another card that is susceptible to Droll and Lockbird, but again, it can also serve as bait for your opponent's Ash Blossom. And, unlike Dotscaper, Hornet Drones doesn't use up your normal summon at all. Hornet Drone special summons a level 1 token, which then links off into Sky Striker Ace Kagari. Kagari adds a Sky Striker spell from your graveyard to your hand, which for our purposes means you get to use Hornet Drones again, summoning the token again. Each of the Yummy cards can also make full combo on its own, but Cupsy Yummy is the best to start with. When Cupsy is summoned, you can add another Yummy card from your deck to your hand. Usually, that's going to be Yummy Surprise, a quick play spell which lets you revive a Yummy from your graveyard, among other things. You can link Cupsy or any other Yummy monster into Yummy Snatchy, which will in turn place a field spell from your deck, specifically Amusement Mignon. Mignon lets you revive a level 1 Yummy monster if you control a Link one, and it also buffs up your Yummy monster's attack power if you have a bunch in the field, which is how you can hit the opponent lethally during your turn. In case your Snatchy or Mignon gets negated though, you'll want Yummy Surprise to get your Cupsy back. If you happen to draw 2 Yummies that aren't Cupsy, you're actually still okay. Cupsy Yummy, Cookie Yummy, and Lollipo Yummy each allow you to special summon them if you already control a Link 1 monster or a level 2 Synchro monster. And a Marshmallow Yummy can special summon itself if your board doesn't have any monsters apart from Light Beasts, which the Yummy monsters all are, of course. Either way, your board should have a Link 1 and a level 1 monster on the board. That's all you need to Synchro summon Cupsy Yummy Way. Cupsy Way allows you to add 2 Yummy monsters from your deck to your hand, and then discard a card. This is how you start your Yummy combo, no matter whether you opened with Dotscaper, Sky Strikers, or Yummies, or some combination thereof. I usually prioritize Cupsy, Marshmallow, Cookie, and then Lollipo in that order. If you have Assist Yummy, that's probably the best choice for you to discard, but apart from that it gets tougher. If you have 2 of the same hand trap, or a Yummy that you've already summoned this turn, or a spare Engage or Raise Map, those are probably the best things to discard, since you won't get as much mileage out of them. Either way, now that there's a level 2 Synchro monster, you should be able to special summon Cupsy and get Surprise if you haven't already, and you can probably summon Marshmallow too. Link into another Snatchy, or Link Karibo, Then synchro summon Lollipo Yummy Way. Lollipo Way will special summon any 2 Yummy monsters from your graveyard, but their effects will be negated. That's okay though, we're going to synchro climb with them anyway. If you haven't special summoned Marshmallow yet, this might be your last chance. All the Yummy Ways are tuners, so synchro summon with Lollipo Way and a level 1 Yummy to make Marshall Metal Marcher. Marshall Marcher is a level 3 synchro monster, which also counts as a tuner, and he'll revive another tuner, i.e. your Lollipo Way, when he gets summoned. If, for some reason, you revived Yummy Snatchy with Lollipo Way's effect, and you don't have another level 1 Yummy in the field, you should use Yummy Surprise to revive Marshmallow. Marshmallow can add a Yummy spell from your graveyard to your hand, which means you can get Surprise back for free and use it during your opponent's turn. Once you have a level 1 Yummy, use it and Marshall Marcher to synchro summon Herald of the Arc Light. This card will force any card sent from either player's main deck or hand to the graveyard to become banished instead. Cards like Maxi, which specifically ask to be sent to the graveyard, won't work at all. And cards which destroy or tribute themselves to activate effects won't even see the graveyard, which can severely cripple some decks. This kind of effect is commonly known as a floodgate. Even when you're not directly negating your opponent, they have to play around a really annoying restriction. Speaking of negates though, Herald can tribute itself to negate just about anything your opponent does. You lose the floodgate if you tribute Herald, but it's the kind of effect that makes opponents scoop in Master Duel. There's a reason you can't play Herald in the physical version of the TCG. Speaking of cards that are banned in the TCG, you should still have your Lollipo Way and at least one more Yummy monster on the board, so you should try making Sprite Elf. Sprite Elf protects the cards it points to from being targeted, which means you're generally going to want Herald in the center column or on one of the far left or right sides. Sprite Elf can also revive a level 2 monster during each player's turn, which for our purposes almost always means one of the Yummy Ways. Now, if you didn't get negated at all, you should be able to use that Yummy Way plus one more Yummy card on your side of the field to link into IP Masquerena. IP Masquerena can link summon during your opponent's turn into the staple SP Little Knight, which can banish any card from the field or graveyard when summoned, and temporarily banish even more cards if your opponent activates any effects while she's on the field. Or, you can link into Gorgon of Xelofthonia, which can negate monster effects in multiple of your opponent's zones. That's all going to happen on your opponent's turn though. For now, you should set the Yummy Surprise you still have in your hand and pass the turn over to your opponent. Now, here's where the deck gets really fun. As early as you can during your opponent's main phase, you can use Sprite Elf to summon a Yummy Way from your graveyard. Each of the Yummy Ways has a secondary effect. When your opponent activates a card or effect, you can return your Yummy Way to the extra deck and special summon 2 Yummy monsters from your graveyard. Snatchy still grabs you a field spell, and you can switch out Mignon for a Croaky here, which will let you destroy an opponent's card when you synchro summon a Yummy Way, and it allows you to special summon a Yummy from your deck if your opponent somehow destroys one of your monsters with a card effect. All of the main deck Yummy monsters have slightly augmented effects when summoned by your Yummy Ways too. Cupsy lets you draw a card instead of searching for a Yummy, which might let you draw a hand trap to use during your opponent's turn. Cookie can destroy a card on the field, and Lollipo can banish a card from the opponent's graveyard. Marshmallow's summoned by a synchro effect used to be the most underwhelming. It could also place a field spell or continuous spell or trap face up on your side of the field, but Snatchy already gets a Croaky, and the continuous spell and trap that released alongside the rest of the archetype were both pretty bad. Recently though, a new continuous trap card was released, Assist Yummy. Assist can send itself and another of your Yummy cards to the graveyard to bounce any card on the field or from either graveyard to the hand. It doesn't target and it doesn't destroy. Bounce your opponent's normal summon if you want. Grab a hand trap that you discarded and use it on the next turn. You could even return something from the opponent's graveyard to their hand or extra deck, as if Lollipo and Herald didn't mess with their graveyard enough already. Going back to Snatchy and Croaky for a bit, Snatchy also has a quick effect that lets you synchro summon during your opponent's main phase or battle phase. You can synchro into Cookie Yummy Way and flip your opponent's monsters face down, or into Cupsy Way or Lollipo Way if you want to get more cards onto the field or into your hand. Snatchy isn't once per turn either. If you make full combo and revive Lollipo Way with Sprite Elf, you can return Lollipo Way to the extra deck, summon Snatchy and Marshmallow to place a Croaky and assist, use Snatchy to synchro into Cookie Way, flip your opponent's monsters face down, use Cookie Way's effect to summon Snatchy and Cookie, use Cookie's effect to destroy a monster, use Snatchy again to synchro back into Lollipo Way, revive monsters for next turn's attacks, use a Croaky to destroy an opponent's monster, and then use Assist to bounce a card back to hand. And that's without even touching your IP Masquerena, or Herald's effects, or any hand traps you might have in your hand. Okay, here's the most boring part of the video. I'm going to try and briefly explain card by card what everything in my deck does and why it's there. Some of this information will be redundant, but for the sake of this being a beginner's guide, I think it's necessary to do this. Dotscaper, a level 1 that revives itself if sent to the graveyard or banished. You can get this with Puri Raise Map, normal summon it, link into Linkuriboh or Almirage, and make Cupsy Way. Cupsy Yummy, a yummy monster that adds a yummy card from your deck to your hand or draws one when summoned by a synchro monster. Because you can get Surprise and revive Cupsy, it's the most resilient to hand traps and thus generally considered the best card to open with. Cookie Yummy, shrinks an opponent's monster by 1000 attack or destroys it when summoned by a synchro monster, extremely annoying for the opponent to deal with on their turn. Lollipop Yummy, when summoned, shuffles a card from the opponent's graveyard into their deck, or banishes it if summoned by a synchro monster. Decent disruption against graveyard-centric decks like Branded. Marshmallow Yummy, gets around a destroyed Snatchy by special summoning itself even if you don't control a Link 1 monster, returns a Yummy spell or trap from your graveyard to your hand, or places a field or continuous Yummy spell or trap face up from your deck or banishment. Usually grabs Surprise on your turn and assists on your opponents. Max C, the best card in the game. It's worth noting that you can't actually use it when Herald is on the field. I've even discarded Max C with Cupsy Way a few times. Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, a niche option that lets me destroy cards early on in my opponent's turn. People don't expect it, and if I open Ghost Ogre and Imperm and negate and destroy their normal summon monster, people sometimes scoop right there. Again, Ghost Ogre has to be sent to the graveyard, so you can't use it under Herald. Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, stops the opponent from getting cards out of the deck, the second best card in the game. Keep in mind that you can't use this if you play Dominus Purge from your hand this game. Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion, stops the opponent from getting cards out of the graveyard. A lot of popular decks, such as Radiant Typhoon, Branded, and Cool Tune, search either the deck or the graveyard with a lot of their starter cards, so Ghost Bell is almost as good as Ash against them, hence I run it at 3. Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chill. I initially ran it just because I could negate opponents' monster effects during their turn while Herald was on the field, as an alternative to Effect Veiler, which I'll cover later. But it's a debate as to what's actually better, since Ghost Mourner needs to be played as soon as the opponent special summons and can't negate a normal summon monster's effects. Mulcharmy Purulia, lets you draw whenever your opponent summons from their hand. I play 2 of this and only 1 Fua because some decks don't summon much from the deck, if at all, such as Apophis and Radiant Typhoon, and I'd rather have an extremely high chance of drawing 1 or 2 cards than a good chance to draw 5 or 6. I play Purulia during the draw phase if I get it, so that even the normal summon lets me draw. Mulcharmy Fualos, lets you draw whenever your opponent summons from their deck. Another staple card that it's never a bad idea to run more of if you don't know what to put in a deck. My hand trap line is focused on stopping the opponent before they summon a bunch of monsters from the deck in the first place, but the potential to draw several new cards shouldn't be underestimated. Sky Striker Mobilize Engage, searches for Hornet Drones, pretty simple stuff. Puri Raise Map, searches for Cupsy or Dotscaper. If you decide to run Jester Confit, it can search that out too. Keep in mind that you won't be able to search with Cupsy if you use Raise Map to get it and then normal summon something else. Yumusement Mignon, lets you revive a level 1 Yummy if you have a Link 1 on the field, and gives your Yummies 500 attack for each Light Beast on the field. It can also shuffle itself into the deck from the graveyard, along with 2 Yummy monsters from your graveyard or banishment. This can't go into your full combo on its own, but it is absolutely necessary for the deck to function. Search this with Snatchy on your turn. Yumusement Akroqui, lets you destroy a card if you synchro summon a Light Beast, and lets you special summon a Yummy from the deck if one of your cards leaves the field by an opponent's card effect. It also has the same shuffle effect as Mignon. It's worth noting that you don't get to summon if your opponent takes control of your monster or tributes your monster with a cost such as with Lava Golem. Still, you'll usually want to get this with Snatchy during your opponent's turn. Called by the Grave, negates and banishes the monster from your opponent's graveyard. It's basically the ultimate extender card. Your most common use of this will be when your opponent activates a hand trap monster. It doesn't negate stuff like Imperm or Purge though. Sky Striker Mecha Hornet Drones, makes a level 1 Sky Striker token, which can be linked into Kagari before we get Hornets back and use it again. It's a 1-card combo that doesn't require your normal summon at all. Yummy Surprise, lets you activate one of 3 effects. Revive a Yummy, but it can't attack directly, bounce 2 of your Yummies and 2 cards your opponent controls, or return a field spell from the board or graveyard to your hand and put it back on the board. Since Snatchy Synchro Summon is a quick effect, you can actually use Surprise to target your Snatchy and another Yummy monster and chain Snatchy onto it, allowing you to Synchro Summon and bounce your opponent's cards back to their hand without having to waste your own. You'll want to grab this with Cupsy on your turn, use it to revive something, return it to hand with Marshmallow, set it, and figure out the best time to use it during your opponent's turn. Infinite Impermanence, negates an opponent's monster until the end of the turn. If your board is empty, i.e. if you're going second, you can activate it from your hand, but if you set it and then activate it, you also get to turn off any spells and traps in its column. I usually set imperms on the far left or right, in case my opponent is using pendulum monsters like an Aeocraft's. Dominus Purge negates an effect that would add a card to your opponent's hand, and if there's another trap card in your graveyard, you can destroy the monster or spell that tried. It's a very powerful negate, as it's one of the few that can destroy things too. If your opponent has a card on the field, you can even play it from your hand, but if you do, you won't be able to use fire, water, or dark monsters effects for the rest of the game. In this list, you'll be cut off from Ash Blossom, Ultrami Perulia, and everything in your extra deck apart from your Yummy monsters, Martial Marcher, and Herald. Be careful when using this. Assist Yummy. It actually has 3 effects. During each standby phase, you can gain 100 life points and force your opponent to lose 100 life points. This isn't very good, but it's cute. During the main phase or your opponent's battle phase though, you can send it and another Yummy card you control to the graveyard to return any card from the field or either graveyard to that player's hand. It doesn't target and doesn't destroy, so it gets around a lot of protection cards, and if you'd rather add something to your hand, you can. You can also banish Assist from your graveyard to send a Yummy card from your deck to the graveyard. You can't use the bounce and the mill effect in the same turn, but if you happened to draw Assist in your opening hand, you can discard it with Cupsue, banish it to send a Cookie or Lollipop to the graveyard, and then get it back with Marshmallow during your opponent's turn. If you do discard Assist on your turn, try to remember to banish it before making Herald of the Arclight. If you banish it after, the other Yummy will be sent to the banishment too, and you want your Yummies in the graveyard so you can summon them with your Synchro monsters during your opponent's turn. Cupsy Yummy Way. When Synchro summoned, adds 2 Yummy monsters from your deck to hand, and discards a card. Cupsy is the most important, followed by Marshmallow, Cookie, and Lollipop in most scenarios. It can also bounce itself to the extra deck when your opponent activates a card or effect to revive 2 Yummies from your graveyard. Cookie Yummy Way. When Synchro summoned, flips up to 2 cards face down. This is probably the least useful of the Yummies, and if you have an opportunity to cripple your opponent by flipping even 1 card face down, you should probably just take that chance before their board gets too big to handle at all. It also has the self-bouncing effect to revive 2 Yummies. Lollipop Yummy Way. When Synchro summoned, revives 2 Yummies but negates their effects. This is needed to fill your board to set up and can help with kill turns later on too. This also has the self-bouncing effect to revive 2 Yummies. Martial Metal Marcher. Make it with a Yummy Way and any level 1, and revive a Yummy Way in defense position but negate its effects. It turns stuff into tuners, but that's not relevant in this list. Herald of the Arclight. Make it with a Martial Marcher and any level 1, and your opponent might concede right then and there. While it's on the field, any card sent from the hand or main deck to the graveyard is banished instead. You can tribute it to negate and destroy just about anything. When tributed, it can add a ritual monster from your deck to your hand, but if you want to deal with that, I can't really help you since I don't play Mitsurugi. Superstar Slayer Typhone Sky Crisis. If your opponent special summoned 2 or more monsters from their extra deck, you can try to make a comeback with this thing by using any monster as Xyz material for it. You will have to give up whatever has the highest attack stat though, and you won't be able to summon for the rest of the turn. While it's on the field, neither player can activate the effects of monsters with 3,000 or more attack, and with 2,900 attack and defense itself, it will hit over nearly everything else. You can also detach a material from Typhone to return a card from the field to the hand, but chances are your opponent will have at least 2 monsters with 3,000 attack, and they'll just use the second one to hit over your Typhone and carry on winning the game. I might replace this card someday soon. Link Haribo. A Link 1 monster with some additional utility effects. If you open with Dotscaper, most people argue that you should link into this instead of Almirage, since Almirage can come in handy in later turns if the game gets grindy. If an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can tribute Link Haribo to shrink that monster's attack to 0, which is kinda like forcing them to attack Link Haribo instead of whoever they actually wanted to kill, which would otherwise be rather easy as your endboard monsters don't have great attack and defense numbers. And you can tribute another level 1 monster, i.e. a main deck Yummy, to special summon Link Haribo as a quick effect, which can be useful to get Link Haribo onto the field to use its self-sacrifice effect during your opponent's turn, or to get a Link 1 in general onto the board if you need that later on. Some people even recommend linking into this during your regular Yummy combo instead of making a second Snatchy, as Link Haribo just requires any level 1. Note that Link Haribo's effects can't be used if you played Dominus Purge from your hand earlier. Sky Striker Ace Kakari. When it's summoned, you can add a Sky Striker spell from your graveyard to your hand. It gains 100 attack for each spell in your grave, but you're almost always going to use this as a bridge to Cupsue. Activate drones, link into Kagari, get drones back, use drones again, make Cupsue. Keep in mind that Kagari can't give you your Hornet drones back if you'd use Dominus Purge, but you can still special summon a Yummy from your hand while she's on the board. Solomon Great Almirage. This turns any hand trap into a makeshift extender, since it requires any normal summon monster with 1000 or less attack. If you have a Yummy and multiple Mulcharmy cards going first, you can normal summon a Mulcharmy, make Almirage, special summon the Yummy, and make Cupsue even if your opponent has a card like Infinite Impermanence in their hand. If you just normal summon a Yummy and link into Snatchy, you run the risk of Snatchy getting negated and being unable to place Mignon. You can also make this with Dotscaper, and depending on the circumstance, I sometimes make Almirage first, and even if Almirage gets destroyed, I can link Dotscaper into Linkaribo. Of course, I would need a Yummy card in my hand to get anywhere else if that situation occurs. Almirage can also tribute itself to protect one of your other monsters from destruction effects, and special summon itself from the graveyard if one of your normal summon monsters is destroyed by battle, but I have never used either effect in my time with Yummy. To cover all bases, you can't use either of those effects after purging yourself. Yummy Snatchy requires a level 4 or lower light beast monster. This can be any other Yummy monster, including the Synchro Yummy Ways. When it's special summoned, so not just link summoned, you can place the Yummy field spell face up. On your turn, you'll often get Mignon, and on your opponent's, you'll usually get a Croaky. I haven't talked about the restriction yet though. After you use Snatchy's field spell effect, you won't be able to link summon link 3 monsters for the rest of the turn, which for our purposes means no Gorgon of Xylophtonia. Unless you wind up with an extra Yummy Way on the board though, you should be able to use both Sprite Elf and IP Masquerane's effect if you want to make Gorgon before Snatchy locks you out of it. Snatchy also has a quick effect that allows you to synchro summon with at least one Yummy monster as material during either player's main phase or the opponent's battle phase. You can use this to get out of targeting removal, such as with your own Yummy Surprise, or to destroy a card as soon as it hits the field thanks to a Croaky. And as I mentioned earlier, the synchro summon effect is once per chain, not once per turn, so you can actually make all 3 Yummy Ways if they're all in the extra deck. But keep in mind that each Yummy Way can only bounce itself back into the extra deck and thus summon another Yummy Snatchy once per turn. IP Masquerena requires 2 non-link monsters to link summon, and in turn can be used to link summon another monster during your opponent's main phase, unless you've purged yourself already. The link monster that used IP as material can't be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. Usually you'll use IP and Sprite Elf as material to go into SP Little Knight or Gorgon of Xylophtonia to disrupt your opponent's board. Sprite Elf requires 2 monsters, including a level, rank, or link 2 monster, i.e. a Yummy Way or Max C if you're feeling adventurous. It can revive a level 2 monster from the graveyard during each player's main phase, or a rank or link 2 if your opponent controls a monster, but you're probably not going to revive IP instead of a Yummy Way. You can actually chain Sprite Elf and IP together, thus summoning a Yummy Way and making SP or Gorgon in the same breath. Again, keep Purge in mind. SP Little Knight requires 2 effect monsters, which is every monster in your deck besides the Sky Striker token. If a fusion, synchro, exceeds, or link monster, such as IP Masquerena, was among the materials used to summon SP, you can banish a card from the field or either graveyard at the cost of being unable to attack directly for the turn, which usually won't matter if you're summoning SP during your opponent's turn anyway. Furthermore, if your opponent activates a card or effect while SP is already on the field, you can temporarily banish 2 monsters on the field, including at least one you control. Usually, you'll want to banish SP herself, as she becomes rather useless after both of these effects are activated. At the end of the turn, she'll come back into one of the main monster zones, which is important because otherwise she'd be stuck in the extra monster zone most of the time, and you'd have a difficult time making another Snatchy. She will lose the protection she inherited from IP though. Once more, Dominus Purge stops all of this banishment fun. Gorgon of Xylophtonia. This requires at least 2 effect monsters. Link 2 monsters can count themselves as 1 or 2 materials, so you can use IP Masquerane's effect to use herself and Sprite Elf as material. You'll always want Gorgon in an extra monster zone, so it points to 3 of your opponent's zones. You can't summon to a zone your own Gorgon points to, and any monsters it points to can't attack, and their activated effects are negated. Ironically enough, it doesn't counter passive effects, and all of Gorgon's effects are passive in nature. Despite being Dark Attribute, this card technically works even after using Dominus Purge. If it's not pointing to any monsters, it can't be destroyed by battle or card effects. And if it is pointing to a monster, or multiple monsters for that matter, it gains attack equal to all of their total original attack combined. Alright, I might as well show off some actual duels here. This part of the video is not going to be scripted, so bear with me if I explain something wrong, I'm very sorry. But I know my deck kind of well, so hopefully I'll be able to explain what's going on. So, I'm going first, and I have a total of 4 starters, which is honestly really good going first. I have Dotscaper, I have Cookie Yummy, I have Lollipo Yummy, and Sky Striker Mobilized Engage. Alright, so at the start of my main phase, because I control no monsters in my main monster zone, I get to use Sky Striker Mobilize Engage, which will add another Sky Striker card from my hand, i.e. Hornet Drones. And then Hornet Drones will activate. Because I still have no monsters in my main monster zone, I get to special summon a Sky Striker Ace token. This is level 1 token and so on and so forth. My opponent uses Mulcharmy Fuwalos, which will allow them to draw once each time that I special summon from the extra deck, which is obviously pretty scary. And I have no way of getting around this, because Dominus Purge can only be activated from hand if my opponent controls the card, which they don't because they're just discarding Fuwalos. So instead of going into my Sky Striker Ace Kagari as I normally would, and thus getting Hornet Drones back and being able to summon the Sky Striker Ace token again, I decide to normal summon Lollipo Yummy. I decide to use Lollipo Yummy's effect when it's summoned to shuffle their Mulcharmy Fuwalos back into their deck, because I would like them to draw it again at some point, because they're going to be controlling cards pretty soon. And then I link summon Lollipo Yummy into Yummy Snatchy. Now my opponent does get to draw because I special summon a monster from my extra deck when they had used Mulcharmy Fuwalos in that turn. However, I do get to use Snatchy's effect still to place Amusement Mignon from my deck face up on my field. I decide to use Mignon to revive Lollipo Yummy, and then I also decide to special summon Cookie Yummy, now that I control Yummy Snatchy, a Link 1 monster, and set Dominus Purge face down, which will allow me to negate any effect that would allow my opponent to add a card from their deck to their hand. Alright, so this is known as, at least I call it slow playing. I don't know if there's a term for it, but I decided deliberately to not go into my full combo because I didn't want my opponent to draw a bunch of cards. So my opponent decided to draw. They're using another Fuwalos. They probably drew the one that I shuffled back into their deck. Unfortunate. As you may know, Yummy likes to summon from the extra deck even during my own turn. Or rather, during their own turn. My apologies. But the most they'll be able to draw is 3 cards. So I actually... Oh no, I did decide to Dominus Purge it. Never mind. I don't... Well, that's how you know this isn't scripted. I forgot what I even did on the beginning of my opponent's turn. So I used Dominus Purge and negated their Fuwalos, actually. Gosh. Alright. Like and subscribe for more amazing content wherein I know what I'm doing at all times. Alright. So now my opponent activates the Fallen the Virtuous, which sends a card from their extra deck to the graveyard and then targets a monster and destroys it. So, ow. Wait, why wasn't I able to use Yummy Snatchy's effect? Oh, right. This is all during the draw phase. My opponent's actually playing really smartly. The Fallen the Virtuous is a quick play spell, which means they can actually activate this spell during the draw phase of their own turn. And Yummy Snatchy's Synchro Summon effect is only active during the main phase, or the opponent's battle phase. So they actually were able to destroy my Yummy Snatchy before I could do anything with it. So right now, my board is basically nothing. I have bodies on the board that can't summon, can't destroy, can't negate. This is not a good situation for me. My opponent goes in the main phase. They decide to use a Hornet Drones of their own, which is really fun. You never know what to expect. And then they're going into Kagari. That's the Altar Kagari. I wish I had that. And then they target Hornet Drones in the graveyard and add it to hand. Excuse me. And then they use Hornet Drones to make another token. And they go into Sky Striker Ace equals 0, which I don't know too much about the Sky Striker line, but I've played a lot of it to learn some by osmosis. Sky Striker Ace 0 is very powerful because, first of all, when a special summon, you can add a Sky Striker spell from your deck or graveyard to the hand. They're adding a Sky Striker Mobilize Engage. You can imagine that in the Sky Striker deck, Engage is way more useful than it is in Yummy. You basically get whatever you want. 0 also has a quick effect that contribute itself to special summon 2 Sky Striker Ace monsters, Ray and Rose, from their main deck or graveyard, and then they can just destroy a card in the field. You're not targeting it. So yeah, really, really annoying card to deal with. Very strong. So they get Engage, which is basically an Omni Searcher at this point. So they use Engage, and they got Sky Striker Mobilize Linkage, which allows them to send a card to the graveyard and control a Sky Striker Ace monster from their extra deck. I don't know too much about this, about Sky Strikers, but I know that this card is really annoying to go against. Basically, if there's a Sky Striker deck and you see a UR card that has Sky Striker in its name, know that it's going to ruin your day. Now, my opponent just goes right into the battle phase, and they just attack my Cookie Yummy. That's why I placed all these guys in defense position. Obviously, I mean, it would have been nice if I actually had Cookie in attack here because I had a 2000 attack, but whatever. Point is, they destroy Cookie, but I don't take any life point damage. Main phase 2, they set 3 cards face down. Keep in mind that quick plays, such as Linkage, can be used during the opponent's turn, i.e. my turn, which is really fun. Also, Albion the Branded Dragon, the card that my opponent sent to the graveyard with Fallen Virtuous, allows you to add a branded spell or trap from your deck to the hand or set it. And if it's a quick play spell, that means that they'll be able to use it during my turn. So they get to set another Fallen and Virtuous, which means they're probably going to destroy one of these guys, which is not fun for me. But too bad, that's Yu-Gi-Oh, baby. Alright, so now it's the beginning of my turn. I go in the draw phase, and as soon as I draw a card, once again, my opponent uses the Fallen and the Virtuous to send another monster that mentions Fallen of Avalanche from the deck of the graveyard, and then they decide to target my Lollipop Yummy and destroy it. They presumably target Lollipop Yummy so I can't go into Snatchy. Little do they know, though, that I have Dotscaper, the card of all time. Also, they're deciding to go Sky Striker Ace equals 0. They're attributing it, and I believe they decide to destroy Sky Striker Ace token with this because oh no, they targeted Mignon. Oh, that makes sense, actually. That makes sense because, you know, theoretically, I could use the token, go into Sky Striker Ace Kagari, and I can get Hornet Drones back and summon another token. But Yamuset Mignon would still allow me to special summon Yummy from my graveyard because I control any Link 1. Even if that Link 1 is Kagari, or Link Karibo, or Solomon Great Almirage, whatever have you. In any case, I go to my main phase, and I do decide to link my token into Kagari anyway, and use Kagari's effect to target a Sky Striker spell in graveyard and add it to hand. Now, my opponent uses Forbidden Droplet, which allows them to send any other cards in their hand and or field to the graveyard and negate that same number of effect monsters that I control, which means that they negate my Sky Striker Ace Kagari. Very unfortunate. However, I'm able to normal summon Dotscaper still, so now I have a level 1 and a Link 1. My opponent uses Sky Striker Ace Raise quick effect to tribute itself and then special summon a Sky Striker Ace from their extra to the extra monster zone. Very fun. So they get Kagari, which is one of the cards of all time. They get to add an Engage their graveyard to their hand. Now, they can't do anything with this Engage, but, you know, it's obviously set up for next turn, assuming that there is a next turn. Excuse me again. Anyway, I have a Link 1 and a level 1, so I do still get to go into Cupsy Yummy Way, which allows me to add 2 Yummy monsters from my deck to my hand and then discard a card. Also, because Dotscaper was sent to the graveyard, i.e. as material for the Synchro Summon, I get to special summon Dotscaper, and I can use that later. So Dotscaper revives itself in defense position. Cupsy Yummy Way gets Cupsy Yummy and Marshmallow Yummy, and then I decide to discard Yummy Zuna Kurokui, because at this point, I'm just trying to get as many Yummies onto the board as possible. Yamuset Mignon will use its shuffle effect. It targets Snatchy and Cookie and shuffles them both into the decks. Actually, technically, Yamuset Mignon puts cards at the bottom, but don't worry about it. Anyway, I decide to special summon Cupsy Yummy because I have a level 2 Synchro monster on the board, and I get to add a Yummy Surprise from my deck to my hand. And now I link Cupsy Yummy into Snatchy, which in turn allows me to get Yamuset Mignon, which in turn allows me to target and special summon a level 1 Yummy monster from my graveyard because I control a Link 1 monster. I decide to get Lollipop Yummy, which shuffles Rose into the deck because Sky Striker Ace Rose has an effect that allows it to special summon itself while it's in the graveyard, and I don't want my opponent doing that this turn. Then I decide to use Yummy, Snatchy, and Dotscaper, again, Link 1, level 1, even though the Dotscaper's not a Yummy, to make Lollipop Yummy Way. I summon it to the extra monster zone because I want space for my Marshmallow. Lollipop Yummy Way is going to choose 2 Yummy monsters in my graveyard and summon them, but negate their effects. And I have to get Snatch because it's the only one. Now that all of my monsters are light beasts, I can and do decide to special summon Marshmallow Yummy from my hand. Now I have a very big board because Yummy's Mignon is giving each of my Yummies 3,000 attack. Because there are 6 light beasts on the field, 6 times 500 is 3,000. And I have 21,200 attack power on the board. So I swing... And then Ray actually does get to special summon itself because the Sky Striker Ace Link monster was destroyed by battle. It summons in defense position, so my opponent takes as little damage as possible. I don't care. I swing. And then I swing, and then my opponent uses Sky Striker Mobilize Linkage. Because my opponent controls no monsters in the main monster zone, they can send another card from their field to the graveyard, and then special summon another Sky Striker Ace into the extra monster zone. Which is annoying because, you know, they get to do cool stuff. However, I decide to use Yummy Surprise's Hand Bounce effect, targeting 2 light beast monsters I control and 2 cards my opponent controls and return them to the hand. You see, Sky Striker Mobilize Linkage actually doesn't send the card to the graveyard as a cost. It's part of the effect. And if they send that card to the graveyard, they get to summon a monster from their extra deck. I.e., if I use Yummy Surprise to bounce my opponent's Sky Striker card from the board to the hand, they can't send a card they control to the graveyard because they have no other cards. Therefore, they don't get to special summon a Sky Striker monster, i.e., I get to win the game. Wait, why did I return a field spell? What? Why did I return a field spell from my face of field or graveyard to the hand? Why did I do that? Am I stupid? Yes. I don't know why I did that, actually. Why did I use that ability? I don't understand why I did that. Why did I do that? Why did I get Yamizuna Krokwi? I don't understand. If you know in the comments, say so, I guess. Anyway, they make Shizuku, or not Shizuku, they make Prototype Striker Ace Amatsu, which, I don't care about. I don't know why I don't care about that. I don't know why. Why didn't they use the effect? Oh, because I already declared an attack with Yummy Snatchy? Is that why? Because like I declared an attack, a direct attack with Yummy Snatchy, and then they summoned this, and I think because Yummy Snatchy attacked Amatsu on replay instead of it being the original target when it was declared, I think he doesn't get to activate the targeting effect here. That's weird. That's interesting, but it's weird. Yu-Gi-Oh is weird. Anyway, I just decided to attack them a couple more times for the win. So as you can see, despite, you know, knowing enough to reach Master Rank 1 and, you know, knowing enough to make a guide, I still am very new to Yu-Gi-Oh. Going over replays of matches that I won and not understanding what I did or why I did what I did or how I won the match. Anyway, let's go to match 2. That's how good this deck is. It just makes you win when you're not supposed to because you're bad at the game, but the deck is cracked. All right. So in this duel, I go first again. Going first is pretty good. I win around 3/4 of the time going first and maybe half the times that I go second. All right, so my only starter here is actually Puri Ray's map, which is very fun. I decide to use it. I get Cupsy Yummy, the best starter in the game, and then my opponent uses Drollin Lockbird, which is a little annoying because that will prevent my Cupsy Yummy from being able to add Surprise to hand, and it will also prevent Cupsy Yummy Way from adding more Yummy monsters from my deck to my hand. So, yeah, that's not good. The only Yummy monster I'm going to see this turn is my Cupsy Yummy. Well, the only main deck Yummy monster. Anyway, I think, did I normal summon Ghost Bell here? I did, yes. Because the effect of Cupsy Yummy isn't going to work anyway, I decide to play the safe route and go into Salamangreat Almirage. Oh, I remember what I did now. And then I special summon, I special summon Cupsy Yummy because I control a Link 1 monster. And then I Link summon into Yummy Snatchy. Yes, I remember now. And then Yummy Snatchy allows me to get the field spell. My opponent plays Super Quantum Black Layer here. because I activated a monster effect. So they get to discard a card and then special summon Black Layer. And then when Quantum Black Layer is special summoned, he gets to basically attach it and a Super Quant monster from the graveyard, so basically the card he discarded, as material for a Super Quantal Mech Beast Xyz monster from his extra deck. And if I remember correctly, is that the card that, like, negates my effects when it has the white guy in there? Yes. Kind of. So he puts Super Quantum White Layer as material, and Super Quantum Mech Beast Luster X gets to say, well, first of all, it can't attack unless it has material, so there's a bit of a trade-off there. But once per turn, you can attach one material from this card, then target one effect monster on the field, negate its effects until the end of this turn. This is a quick effect if this card has Super Quantum White Layer's material, i.e., because it has White Layer, he can use this during my turn, which is really annoying. Anyway, he can't negate my spell card, so I still get to target and special summon the Cupsy Yummy here. And then I decided to go, I assume I went into Lollipop Yummy Way, right? Yes, I went into Lollipop Yummy Way, which, when summoned, I get to activate the effect of trying to special summon 2 Yummy cards from a graveyard, but negating their effects. But my opponent decided, no, nuh-uh, I'm going to quick effect that. And he got rid of the card that is not White Layer, because White Layer is still his material, so we'll still get to use it as a quick effect during the next turn. So he's trying to negate my Lollipop Yummy Way. Unfortunate. However, I decided to just use Lollipop Way's bounce effect now, return it to the extra deck, and then special summon 2 Yummy monsters from my graveyard, which are obviously going to be Cupsy Yummy and Yummy Snatchy. And then I decided to Secret Summon again, go into Cookie Yummy Way, which I think it's because I thought that I'd be able to get rid of his Xyz material if I made him go face down, which is not the case apparently. I'm actually kind of dumb. But because I had a level 2 monster, Cookie Yummy Way, I was able to use Almirage plus Cookie Way to go into Sprite Elf, which in turn allowed me to revive a Yummy Way, which is Cookie in this case. So I don't lose too much by going into Cookie Way. In fact, Sprite Elf will allow me to revive Cookie Way again, because I think I end up linking into Snatchy, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyway, Yummy Surprise allows me to special summon the Yummy from my graveyard, and then, oh, that's what I did. I used Cookie Yummy Way and Cupsy Yummy as material to make IP Masquerena. And then I set Dominus Purge down. So this endboard is honestly pretty similar to what you expect. I just don't have Herald of the Arclight right now. A weird route to get here, but I don't have Herald and I don't have Yummy Surprise. Apart from that, this is kind of a traditional Yummy endboard, which, again, it's much worse. You don't have some of the most important things, but Yummy does things. Yummy is very fun. Anyway, my opponent goes to draw, standby, main. Okay. They flip their Quantal Mech Beast, Luster Rex, and I decide to use Sprite Elf to special summon Cookie Yummy Way. My opponent uses Super Quantal Mech Beast, Luster Rex to try to negate my Sprite Elf. However, I use IP Masquerena's effect, and if I remember correctly, do I go into Gorgon here? I think I do. IP Masquerena. My opponent uses Layer 19 Sudden Incursion Super Quantum Black. Very cool. And if I remember correctly, my opponent misplays here, because they decide to special summon a Super Quant monster from their deck in defense position. They summon it to their center zone, which is a big mistake, because I go into Gorgon of Zelithonia, I place it in front of my opponent's Xyz monster here, and therefore I actually get to negate their Luster Rex, because Gorgon just passively negates everything that it points to. So that effect doesn't work. Therefore, Luster Rex doesn't negate my Sprite Elf, i.e. I do in fact get to special summon Cookie Yummy Way. Also, their Super Quantum Black Layer is negated because Gorgon of Zelithonia also points to that. My opponent also decided to summon Mind Procedure. Good for them. They go into Baronne de Fleur, which is one of the strongest cards in the game, unironically. because Baron de Fleur is 3,000 attack, they actually can hit over either of my cards. They decide to kill my Cookie Yummy Way, which is honestly very understandable because otherwise Cookie Yummy Way would be able to do very fun things. And so my opponent now gets to summon Super Quantal Fairy Zaton. Decides to do that very smartly after Cookie Yummy Way is already dealt with, so that I don't get to use Cookie Way's effect to special summon guys from my graveyard. Very cool. And then they get to use Fairy Zaton's effect of tributing itself and sending a Super Quant card from there to the graveyard, except for a Dark Monster. And they get to special summon another Super Quant monster from their deck, except for Zaton itself. And then Fairy Alphan tributes itself, reveals 3 different Super Quants. I have to randomly choose one to special summon. They got Super Quantum White Layer. Then they sent another Super Quant from the deck to the graveyard. And because... Wait, why did Super Quantal Quantum Black happen? Oh, is it because the other cards... hold on, let me just read. Not that it matters too much per se. What am I doing here? Fairy Zonton. Wait, what's the effect? What is happening? Oh yes, the other 2 cards get sent to the graveyard, and then all the Super Quant cards have effects in the graveyard. So Black Layer gets to add a spell from the deck to the hand, and then Red Layer gets to special summon a card from the graveyard because they were sent to the graveyard with the effect of Fairy Alphon, because I randomly chose White Layer instead of Red Layer or Black Layer. Very cool. Me when Bingo Machine Go, but 10 times better, but for a much worse deck overall. Alright, so they get Black Layer. They also get Layer 19. And then I don't even know what they're doing at this point. I don't even know. Whatever. There comes a point when you're playing against a deck, especially when you're unfamiliar with, and you just have to be like, okay, you could cook. I don't even know what's going on. I'm just gonna negate cards when they glow in my hand. And that, I feel like that's kind of what I did. Yeah, very cool. Oh yeah, I don't even... Yeah, the banished cards, sure. Why the hell not? The Espulal Knight targets Gorgon. I get banished, sure. Yu-Gi-Oh's confusing, okay? I'm not... Like, I'm trying to commentate and figure out what the hell's going on, but I am not perfect at this game. I'm very sorry. Anyway, Pure Erase map. I think I got Dotscaper here. I did. So Dotscaper normal summons itself, and then I go into Typhoon Sky Crisis. Without... Again... So SP Linlight will be able to banish me as soon as I activate an effect. I want to bounce Baron de Fleur from the board to the hand. However, I don't want my Typhoon to get temporarily banished. So, I decide to attack SP Little Knight first, and then detach a material from Typhoon to bounce Baron back to hand. And now my opponent has Super Quantum Black and can't do too much with it, except they get Fairy Elephant, distributes it, they reveal 3 random Super Quant cards, I choose one that gets special summoned, the other guys go to the graveyard, then that guy gets to get guys from the graveyard into the deck, and then there's another guy that gets stuff out of the graveyard and special summons it. Again, Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't understand half the things that are happening, even on my own side of the board, let alone my opponent's. And then Fairy Zoltan gets to freaking, I don't even know, do one of those moves. He gets another guy, and then that guy gets another guy into their hand. Why not? Sure. And then banishes the spell card to get a Super Quantal Mech Ship Magna Carrier. And then that guy becomes an Xyz monster. Why the hell not? Targets a spell and trap and destroys it. Sounds good to me. I don't need that card yet. Then attaches a card as material. Why not? Why the heck not? This is good to get materials. Why the heck not? Anyway, I have 1,500 life points. So then I decided to normal summon Cookie Yummy, and if I remember correctly, I decided to target Super Quantum Black and shrink it by quite a bit, and then I make Yamusement Mignon go back into the deck. And then I link into Snatchy, which allows me to get Mignon back, which also allows me to special summon a level 1 Yummy monster. And I think my opponent scooped here because I was going to summon a level 1 monster from my graveyard. I was going to hit both of their guys, and I was going to like go into big combo. I think I actually had the potential to synchro summon into Lollipo Yummy Way and then just swing for game. So yeah, that would have happened, but my opponent scooped before I could show that off. Very unfortunate because, like, I'm sure the visual of what happened at the end was just a complete mess for anyone that's watching and doesn't already understand how Yummy deck works. So I'm very sorry about that. Anyway, watch my opponent scoop when I go first, because it's funny. I don't remember exactly. I think my opponent tried negating me and just failed on this one. So I went first. I have multiple Yummies to start with, which was really good. I decided to start by special summoning Marshmallow because I can only use my normal summon later on Ghost Warner. And I can special summon Lollipop later once I get Yummy Snatching on the board. And I link it to Yummy Snatching. I decide to get the Field Spell, presumably. Yep. Field Spell, tries to survive Marshmallow, it works. Then I go into Cupsy Yummy Way. Then I add 2 Yummies from deck to hand, get Cupsy, get Cookie. I assume I discard Assist, because again, Assist has that banishment effect, so it's not even that bad if you have to discard it. My opponent uses Droll and Lockbird, which means that Cupsy Yummy can't get surprised, but that's fine. It's not the end of the world. But because my opponent did that, I actually get to use Cupsy Yummy Way's effect to special summon 2 more Yummies from the discard, and I get to chain Assist Yummy to banish it immediately and send a Yummy to the graveyard from the deck, as we can see here. So I send Lollipop away, and then Cupsy Way gets me Marshmallow and Lollipop Yummy. I decide to use both Marshmallow and Lollipop Yummy's effects at the same time. Lollipop Yummy can banish a card from the grave because I summoned it by with the effect of my Yummy Way. And Marshmallow Yummy, because even though this is my own turn, usually you're supposed to get surprised with it, whatever, I special summoned it with the effect of my Synchro Monster, so I actually get to place my assist face up on my field. And then I get to link into Linkaribo, and then I get to Synchro into Lollipop Yummy Way, which places 2 Yummy monsters from a graveyard onto the board, and that gets special summon all of these guys. I go into Martial Metal Marcher first, though, and decide to target a tuner in the defense position, and I was going to get into full combo. You can probably imagine that my opponent was crying, and that's what I love to see. I want my opponents to feel pain by sugar overdose. Oh my gosh. All right. Yeah, I'm probably gonna go and talk about other cards. Actually, this expert is also not part of the script, but I know I wanted to talk about them. I bookmarked a bunch of cards that are good in Yummy, potentially, probably not. I'm not sure. But like I've seen people play them, or I used to play them, but I don't play them for various reasons. So first of all is going to be Psy-Frame Driver plus Psy-Frame Gear Gamma. I'm just going in the order in which these are listed in Master Duel. So there are a bunch of Psy-Frame monsters. If I look up Psy-Frame, and then there's like Gamma, Beta, Epsilon, Delta, Alpha. I don't think there's a Sigma, unfortunate for all of you, all of the Sigmas in the audience. Anyway, Psy-Frame Gear Gamma is the best one. It says if your opponent activates a monster effect while you control no monsters. So basically, if you're going second, you can special summon Gamma and Psy-Frame Driver from your deck or hand or graveyard or whatever. Excuse me. And you can negate that effect and banish that monster. To be honest, actually, if you happen to go first and you hit Psy-Frame Gear Gamma and you and your opponent like tries to Mulcharm you or something, like in the draw phase, which, they sometimes do that, you can actually get Gamma off, and then like link Gamma and Frame Driver into like Sprite Elf or something, which is kind of funny, to be honest. But I don't really like it because, one, it is almost always just a going second card, and like besides Ghost Ogre, I guess, and technically Maxi is a Herald, but you can tribute Herald. But like, pretty much all of my going second cards also work decently well as going first cards. Besides Perulia and Fualos, which can win you the game on their own with how much they can let you draw, and Maxi. So I don't really like Gamma. It clogs up the hand going first a lot. Plus, you have to run Gamma and a Psy-Frame Driver, which is just objectively a brick. Psy-Frame Driver is a normal monster, which means it doesn't do anything, which means it's bad. You only run Psy-Frame Driver so that you can run Gamma or another Psy-Frame. So I don't really like it. I Honestly, I played one for a while because I got the Royal Rare off of the staple pack and I wanted to put it in. Jester Confid's very popular. You can only control one Jester Confid at a time, but you can special summon as many as you want in attack position, as long as you don't already control a Jester Confid, of course. This means that as if you have a Link 1 monster on the board, whether that's Kagari or Almirage or Snatchy, and you have a Jester Confid, you can just slap that thing right down and you're good. In fact, you can actually special summon Jester Confid before you've done anything else, link it into Link Karibo, because Jester Confid's a level 1, and now, like, if you have another Yummy monster, you can just special summon that. You don't even have to use your normal summon for the turn at all. You can, like, save it if you need to for some reason, which can be nice. You know, sometimes the opponent will try to, like, negate you, or maybe they'll, like, Ghost Ogre you or something, and you won't be able to, you might have nothing on the board afterwards. So, like, Jester Confid can make your board slightly more resilient. It also has, like, this extra effect, but don't worry about it. The problem that I have with Jester Confid is that it's not a true one-card combo on its own. You literally, it just special summons itself as level 1, and then you link it off, and it doesn't get itself back like Dotscaper. So you need another monster. So, like, I just play Dotscaper, Lamau. It's not a bad card, I just don't like it. Effect Veiler. People like this card a lot, and I think with Assist Yummy, it's good. I should probably put it back in. During your opponent's main phase, quick effect, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard, then target one effect monster your opponent controls. Negate the effects of that face-up monster your opponent controls until the end of this turn. So yeah, objectively another going second card because you can't even use the effect during your own turn. Also, because it has to be sent from the hand to the graveyard as part of the cost, you actually can't activate this card if Herald of the Arclight is on the field. However, there are two very cool things to note about it. One is that it's a quick effect that you can activate pretty much at any time. Point 1.5 is that no matter what the effect is, you can activate it. So if their thing is just to negate you, you can say, no, I don't get negated, thanks to Effect Veiler. Which can be useful if, for example, you go first and you have a board set up, but your opponent tries to negate you using, like, IP Masquerena or something. It's annoying that Effect Veiler has to be during main phase as well, because, you know, a lot of decks now will try to do cool stuff during the draw phase, but so be it. The really cool thing about Effect Veiler, though, is that it's not hard once per turn. A lot of these very popular hand traps, like Ash Blossom or Ghost Bell or Maxi, say you can only use this effect of the card once per turn. Effect Veiler doesn't say that. Because of Assist Yummy allowing you to add a card from the graveyard to hand, excuse me, but if you don't, there are situations where you actually don't really need to send a card from your opponent's board to their hand because you have a lot of, like, destruction effects already, but the non-targeting gate is nice in certain matchups. But if you're in a situation where you don't need to bounce a card from your opponent's board to their hand, you can, like, use Effect Veiler during your opponent's turn, and then use Assist Yummy to bring it back into your hand, and then use Effect Veiler again. Or you could just use multiple Effect Veilers. Like, if you draw 2 Effect Veilers, that's kind of fine, unlike drawing multiple Ashes or Ghost Bells or whatever. So that's cool. I should probably playtest this. I should probably take out, like, Ghost Mourner and or Ghost Ogre to put in 1 or 2 Veilers, just for fun, if nothing else. I should also probably put Droll and Lockbird back in. It's good. I just find it weird. I'm not a huge fan of it, but a lot of people like it. Droll and Lockbird is the card that I talked about earlier that makes you cry if you play Raise Map. Droll and Lockbird says, if a card is added from the main deck to your opponent's hand except during the draw phase, quick effect, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard. For the rest of this turn, cards cannot be added from either player's main deck to the hand. Basically, the way that this card works in practice is your opponent gets to draw stuff or search stuff out once, and you play this card, and they can't do it anymore, which is pretty good, because a lot of decks will try to search for multiple cards. Kind of the problem is that, like, I sometimes like doing that too. You know, especially during my turn, Like, if my opponent max sees and I Droll and Lockbird them, I've shut myself off from a lot of the cards in my own deck. And if I Droll and Lockbird them, that means that they've already done stuff. And as I mentioned earlier, the main like synergy of my hand traps is that I am trying to stop them in their tracks before they do anything in the first place. If they get to add a card from their deck to their hand and I Droll and Lockbird them, half the time I'm just gonna feel bad that I didn't get to Ash them or Dominus Purge them instead. Which is largely why I don't play Droll and Lockbird, but really I probably should be testing with it more. Anyway, Magician Souls and Illusion of Chaos. Illusion of Chaos, I'll go over that one first, because they can get each other, kind of. Don't worry about it. Illusion of Chaos, the important part is that you can reveal it in your hand and add a Dark Magician or a non-neutral monster that mentioned it from your deck to your hand, then place a card from your hand on top of the deck, and that is going to be Magician Souls, because Magician Souls mentions Dark Magician. Magician Souls, if it's in your hand, so if you add it with Illusion of Chaos, or if you just have it in your opening hand, you can send a level 6 or higher spellcaster monster from your deck to the graveyard, which is going to be Illusion of Chaos, and then special summon it. You can also send up to 2 spells and traps from your hand into or field to the graveyard while it's on the board and draw that many cards, which is kind of nice, especially like after you use whatever it's called, Yamu's Mignon, or if you have extra Piri Raise maps or Sky Striker cards in your hand. There's actually a bigger package with Magician Souls and Illusion of Chaos that uses stuff like Dark Magician Girl, the Magician's Apprentice, which can special summon itself by just discarding any card, and there are like a bunch of other monsters you can run with it. The problem is it uses a lot of UR points, and I am way too stingy with my UR points to craft that, so I have not tested that extensively. These cards, Illusion of Chaos and Magician Souls, were in a structure deck for Dark Magician that I picked up for 500 Dems because I was like, you know what, sure, I will test this out. And it was okay, but then I discovered Dotscaper and my life changed for the better forever. Anyway, Shamisen Samsara Sorrow Cat. This is generally considered as an alternative to Martial Metal Marcher. Whoops, I accidentally took Martial Marcher out of my deck. I'll add that back in later. Shamisen Samsara Sorrow Cat. It allows you to synchro summon as a quick effect during the opponent's main phase, which is kind of neat. You know, you can go into Herald out of nowhere, which is cool. You can go into a lot of other things, actually. Also, if this card's in your graveyard, you can target another synchro monster in your graveyard and return to the extra deck. And special summon Sorrow Cat. So, like, theoretically, if you have both Cupsy Yummy Way and so instead of going into Martial Marcher, you can go into Sorrow Cat. And there are situations where you will actually be able to have 2 Yummy Ways on the board. So you don't, well, not 2 Yummy Ways, but situations where you will be able to have a Yummy Way on the board even without using Martial Marcher's effect. And in that case, you can forgo Martial Marcher's effect. Instead, use Sorrow Cat to go into Herald of the Arclight, because Sorrow Cat's the level 3 tuner, so 3 + 1 is 4. And then you can send another synchro monster from your graveyard to the extra deck, so i.e. like a Yummy card that you used to make Sorrow Cat in the first place. You can summon Sorrow Cat. If you have yet another Yummy monster, which again does happen sometimes, if you high roll, if you get a bunch of starters, you can do a lot of things. You can make something like Cupid Pitch, which will increase the level from 4 to 7, because 4 + 3 is 7. And then you can use yet another Yummy monster to make 7 + 1 into Borreload Savage Dragon, which basically allows you to negate an effect, because you can equip a Link monster from your graveyard to it, and then get Borrel counters, and then you can discard the Borrel counter and negate the effect, which is pretty neat. Honestly, with this build, I do get to summon a lot of Yummy. Like, there are times when I will have I'll have Sprite Elf and IP Masquerena and Herald of the Arclight, and I'll have like 3 Yummies on the board. So like, there's a theoretical future where I take out, for example, Typhon and Link Karibo, and I put in Cupid Pitch and Borreload, and I roll with that. I'm not sure. Again, I have not tested this. I would also need to put in some Sorrow Cat, which is honestly kind of annoying, actually. I would probably have to actually take out Martial Marcher if I did that. I don't really want to do that because Martial Marcher is good if you just want the base combo. So yeah, it's just a lot of extra deck space is the problem. As you saw, Typhoon kind of helped me win that last game. And then there are other cards that are, good that I would have to take out if I wanted to play the Borreload Savage Dragon build. This was popular when Yummy was new, but people don't really run it as much anymore. All right. Dark the Dark Charmer Gloomy. This is a tech that I made up that nobody else uses, and honestly, I think it's bad. But if you can make it work, go for it. So it requires it's a link monster that requires 2 monsters, including a dark monster, and you can special summon a dark monster from your opponent's graveyard. And if this card is destroyed, then you can add a dark monster with 1500 attack or less from your deck to your hand, which Jester Confit is a dark monster with 1500 attack or less, and Magician Souls is a dark monster with 1500 attack or less. So you can do that if you want. But the main point of using Dark the Dark Charmer was because SP Little Knight and Gorgon of Zelophonia are dark link monsters that can't actually point downwards, which is bad. So the idea was, if I make Dark the Dark Charmer, I can just link into him, and then I can link summon Yummy Snatchy later, and so on and so forth. But the problem is, waste of extra deck space most of the time. I literally never used him, and it's such a complicated thing to do because you would need to have SP/Gorgon on the field, summon another monster, decide to link those off into the link to, and then have another Yummy monster in hand to even go into Yummy Snatchy in the first place. At that point, you just hope your Gorgon gets destroyed or something. It's weird. Or you can play one of the Sky Striker aces that points downwards. There's Azalea, and there's Camellia, and there's Azalea Temperance, and there's Surgical Striker Spectra, which is, it's treated as a Sky Striker ace card. Camellia is the most common one. They're all okay, I guess. I've never actually used any of them myself, so again, this is very much theory crafting here. So the key is that you will usually be getting rid of this eventually. I believe you usually try to get rid of Camellia at some point. It points downwards, so you can link into it and then make Snatchy and so on and so forth. But in a pinch, you can send it to the graveyard with one way or another, and then target a monster your opponent controls and send that monster to the graveyard. You do have to special summon Camellia into your opponent's side of the board, but you get it back, or you can just destroy it. It's only 1500 attack. Pretty cool. Azalea is actually pretty neat as well. I've seen this in decks. When Azalea is special summoned against 2 light and or dark monsters, pretty much all your monsters are light or dark. Azalea can target a card on the field and destroy it. But if you have 3 or less spells in your graveyard, you have to send Azalea to the graveyard, which honestly isn't the worst thing ever, because 1, you might have 3 spells. You might have Surprise and Mignon and maybe a Raise Map or a Sky Striker card in there. Getting to 4 is kind of tough, though. I guess if you have Engaged, then you would also have Hornet Drones in there. Point being that you might just, summon her and then she just dies, but that's not a problem, because the point is that you free up your extra monster zone. Also, as seen here, the damage step, if it battles an opponent's monster, you can banish a spell from your graveyard and destroy it. So if your opponent does have a monster that you struggle to hit over, you can use Azalea if Azalea doesn't die immediately. Azalea Temperance is actually kind of similar in the sense that it requires 2 or more monsters, including a link monster. Again, since you're going to be using SP Little Knight or Gorgon as material, you don't care that Azalea Temperance is link 3, because SP Little Knight counts as 2. Though Gorgon, as far as I'm aware, cannot actually count as 2. It must either be 1 or 3 materials, not 2. Someone correct me if I'm wrong on this. So maybe if you run Gorgon, don't play Azalea Temperance. Same with, actually, Spectra's 4, so it's kind of the opposite, ironically. Point is, you can try to equip an opponent's monster to Azalea Temperance, which is funny. And if it happens to be destroyed by battle, which it probably wouldn't be, if you're summoning Azalea Temperance and actually using it effectively, you're probably going to win the game. But you can, you know, summon a Sky Striker monster from your hand to graveyard, which is probably going to be Kagari, because, well, that's your only other Sky Striker monster in the deck, theoretically. Yeah. So there's that. There's also Surgical Striker Spectra, which requires at least 2 monsters, one of which must be a Link monster. So, you know, Gorgon and one other thing, or SP and 2 other things. And then you can banish 2 spells from your hand and your graveyard to negate your opponent's effect, which is pretty cool. Because, you know, if your opponent tries to do stuff after you summon Spectra, they basically don't. They basically don't get to do stuff. There's a non-zero chance that I craft Spectra and playtest with it, actually. Because that's funny. Like, I might take out Linkaribo. Like, Linkaribo and Typhone are my weakest links. No pun intended with Linkaribo there. But, like, getting... as I mentioned, SP Linlight could get herself off of the field with her own self-banishment effect. So that's not as big of a problem. There have been times, legitimately, where I summon Gorgon, and then it's the right move at the time, but I cannot get Gorgon of Xelothonia off the board. And I just can't do anything, and I dead draw, and then my opponent just decides to win the game. So having a Link 4 would actually not be terrible. A Link 4 that I can use Gorgon to summon relatively easily. Also a points down for whatever that's worth. So there's that. 1 for 1. Send a monster from your hand to the graveyard, and then special summon a level 1 monster from your hand to your deck. I don't think this... I think I'd rather just run an actual 1-card combo, because 1 for 1 can get negated. That's the biggest thing. It's that 1 for 1 can get negated. Also, you have to, like, -1. You have to play 1 for 1 and then discard a hand trap. Well, I guess you could also discard a Yummy, but, like, why would you do that? Just to special summon something. Very annoying. Would not play. I've seen people play it, though. People like it sometimes. I think people just don't know about Dotscaper. Dotscaper is a hot tech. It's so good. I actually really love Dotscaper. I didn't find out about Dotscaper. Someone else found out about Dotscaper and put 1 in their deck, and it's like... Dude, it's so good. 3 is too many. I crafted 3. I happened to get a Royal Rare. I thought that was really funny on the 3rd one, but I think 2 is the right number to run. Yeah. I run 2 Engage, which is kind of like running 3 Hornet. And sometimes I do get 2 Engage or 1 Engage, 1 Hornet, and then I can't use the Engage because, you know, I'd only play 1 other Sky Striker card in my deck. In my main deck, I should say. But, like, the fact that this doesn't use up your normal summon is really nice, because even if they somehow get rid of Kagari and, like, stop you from getting the Hornet drones off again or something, you can just normal summon. It's really funny. This deck is very resilient, and I love that. Dark Ruler No More, I don't know why the heck I used to play this card. It negates the effects of face-up monster your opponent currently controls until the end of the turn, which is neat. You know, if you go second and your opponent builds up a massive board, you don't want them to do stuff. They can't activate monster effects to stop you from stopping their monster effects, which is funny. Problem is, your opponent takes no damage, excuse me, for the entire turn after you use this card. And the problem with that is that, yeah, you can probably destroy all your opponent's monsters with Yummy, but then you're just going to have to, like, go into your Yummy combo after that. And, like, you won't win the game on the turn that you use it. It's kind of like it stalls the game out by a turn. It resets the game almost. But you're going to have 1 less card in your hand because you're playing Dark Ruler No More. So it's like, it's okay. Also, a lot of decks now, like Radiant Typhoon, Branded, Cool Tune. Actually, not so much Cool Tune, but they still do to a lesser extent. A lot of their annoying effects are with spell and trap cards. So playing Dark Ruler No More doesn't really guarantee that you'll be able to get your Yummy combo off anyway. All right. I'll skip over the Yummies for now. Forbidden Droplet. This is a card that I probably should be running, and frankly, I should probably be running at 3 because it's a really good card, but I only have 1, and I don't know. It's another card that doesn't stop my opponent in their tracks, per se. Not if I'm going second, at least. Forbidden Droplet. lets you send any number of cards from your hand in or field to the graveyard, and then you choose that many effect monster your opponent controls until the end of the turn. Their attack is halved and their effects are negated, and your opponent cannot activate cards or the effective cards with the same original type, monster, spell, or trap, as the card sent to the graveyard to activate this card. The two big things are that, one, your opponent can't negate it as easily. Like, they can't get around it very easily, because if your opponent's playing a monster-centric deck, just discard a monster card, and then they can't use those monster effects. Same with spells and traps, though traps probably won't come into play as often. The other big thing is that you don't target, you choose effect monsters after, like, when the effect resolves. So if your opponent somehow does, for example... well, like, let's say you're in the Yummy Mirror match, and you use Forbidden Droplet, and you, like, discard only spell and trap cards, so they can still use their Yummy effects. So they use Yummy Snatchy they chain Yummy Snatchy, so they can, like, synchro summon to try to get around your Forbidden Droplet. Lamau, no, actually, I now choose the Yummy way that you synchro summoned. It's really funny. It's great. It's a great card. And I should probably play it, but it just doesn't fit with this specific build's game plan. So I just haven't really put it in, and I haven't really thought about running it much. All right, on to the continuous spell and continuous trap that were released with Yummy that nobody runs because they're bad. Yum Yum Yummies. What a name of a card. What a name for the card. This deck is... Ah, man, the naming scheme of this deck and the aesthetic has been joked about to no end. All right, Yum Yum Yummies. Each time 2 or more Yummy monsters are special summoned to your field at the same time, you gain 500 life points, and if you do, your opponent loses 500 life points. Nobody cares about this effect. It's garbage. Don't worry about it. Life points don't matter. They are not a meter as to how close you are to winning the game. They are a... what's the word? They are a budget, and you can use as many of them as you see fit to help you in the game. Raise Map makes me take 4,000 damage at the start of the game, and it is one of the best cards in the deck. Burn damage of 500 is not relevant. The other effects are at least kind of interesting, though. You can only use each of the following effects of Yummy Yummy Yummies once per turn. You can pay 500 life points, then target 2 face-up monsters in the field, including a Yummy Snatchy. Send both to the graveyard, and if you do, special summon 1 Yummy Secret Monster from your extra deck. This is treated as a synchro summon. So basically, instead of using Yummy Snatchy's effect to synchro summon a Yummy Way, you get to basically use Yummy Snatchy and one of your opponent's monsters as synchro material to make a Yummy Way, which is really funny. However, this is not a quick effect. You can only use this during your turn, which is pretty bad, because you don't really get to disrupt your opponent. It's like a bad, weird disruption effect. Which is why it's bad. And also, the last effect, if your opponent activates a card or effect, except during the damage step, you can pay 100 life points, which, okay, whatever, that's nothing. Immediately after this effect resolves, Link summon 1 Yummy Link monster. Wow. So you have to, like, you still have to use your own cards. You still have to, like, get rid of a main deck Yummy that's already on the board to get Snatchy on the field. This technically can be useful. There might be times when your opponent does something and now you have 2 main deck Yummies on the board and you want to get a Snatchy so you can quick synchro summon later. But, like, it's just so few and far between, and, like, it's bad. I actually used to try to run this card because this and Yummy Redemption were the only, like, things that you could get apart from a Croqui with Marshmallow if you special summoned it by using a Lollipo Ways effect, or by using any Yummy Ways effect, rather. And I tried making it work, but, like, Yummy Yummy Yummies is so bad that I would rather just use Cupsy Yummy to just draw an extra card and hope that it's a hand trap that I can actually use for something relevant. Like, I want this card to be good. I want cards like this to be good. It's really cool. It's really interesting. If this second effect here was a quick effect, goated card. I would play it. It would be so nice. But it's not, so too bad. Anyway, Yummy Redemption. Continuous Trap. Monsters your opponent controls lose 200 attack for each light beast monster in your field and graveyard. Honestly, that's kind of a neat effect, because one of the Yummy's biggest problems is that especially on your opponent's turn when you don't have Mignon on the board, and when half of your monsters are like not even light beasts, excuse me, your Yummy monsters are very weak in attack and defense. So, you know, shrinking your opponent's monsters during their turn or during your turn is pretty nice, actually. But it's not really good enough. Your opponent could just destroy this trap card and stop caring. Same with destroying Mignon. Like, so what? Once per chain, if you synchro summon a light beast monster, you can draw one card and then place one card from your hand at the bottom of the deck. Honestly, this effect is also kind of nice, because if you use Cupsy during your opponent's turn to add 2 Yummy monsters from your deck to your hand, you have 2 cards that are effectively probably dead in your hand. So, like, drawing a card, hoping it's a hand trap, and then putting a Yummy monster on the bottom of the deck, not the worst thing in the world. It's a little much, though, because you have to actually get that Synchro Summon off and so on and so forth, and then you might not even draw into a hand trap that you care about. Anyway, you can also banish Yummy Redemption from your graveyard, then target one Yummy monster you control and one monster your opponent controls, and then switch control of those 2 monsters. That's kind of neat, I guess. You can stop an opponent from, like, having a card on their board that has high attack power or whatever, and the Yummy monster that you send to your opponent's side of the board does still actually buff up your other Yummy monsters, because Mignon just says Yummy monster you control and gain 500 attack for each light beast monster on the field, not on your side. However, you know, the fact that you have to target a monster means that they are probably just going to negate you before you even get the thing off, and so on and so forth. This really just feels like an underpowered, like, beta version of Assist Yummy. Assist Yummy is actually good. That's good stuff. All right, so that's pretty much all of the Yummy stuff that I have to say. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'm going to go watch TV now or something, and, like, I don't know, gather B-roll footage for when I show off the combo working. Bye.